There can be no doubt at all that this phenomenon is real and exists.
The mainstream are switched off, and that in itself is an incredible story. Why are they switched off to something that is so apparently true?
Let me tell you, these forms are on the earth and have been on this earth a long, long time. And you might ask, if they're that sophisticated, why have they lingered here so long?
But so for some of the newcomers, where did Nigel first come across his ideas of, you know, grays being like AI in nature, machine like in nature, and and how did he tie in that to where their quest for trying to achieve that whatever makes us tick, the soul, the spirit, you know, that ties everything together.
Sure. Well, as I'm sure you know, Nigel was probably the very first person, the very first theorist on this subject to talk about the alien phenomenon as possibly some kind of artificial intelligence. And in the time that he was talking about, so his first book was 1997, right? At that time, nobody was talking about this at all. I know it's very much on the agenda now, and many people think this, but nobody at that time. So he's a real pioneer in that field. And I can testify, and so can John, that he was actually talking about it 20 years before that as well.
Indeed.
All the way through. It's just, it took me a while to get the book published, as is often the case with a first book, right? But he was talking about that years before. And I think what he did, he just looked at it logically, and he thought, well, okay, so there has to be life out there in the universe. We're not the only form of life. It just can't be that way. It'd be incredibly egotistical and blind to imagine that with the millions of or billions of possible planets out there, that we're the only form of life. Okay, we with our technology are developing at an incredible pace, and at that stage it wasn't the kind of accelerated rate that we're developing now, because it's going in quantum leaps, right? I mean, very soon his predictions of AI taking over will happen. I mean, we're on the cusp of it now with what Elon Musk is up to, right? So he took that logical progression and said, okay, so we're going in that direction now. There must be planets which are more advanced than us in terms of technology. Okay, they would have created something way in advance of what we have now. And if you follow that logical track, it leads to some kind of artificially intelligent creation that is able to run all the systems on the planet, and maybe even go beyond the planet and look for more possible habitable places when things go wrong on our planet, look for more information, just grow and grow and grow and grow, because it's in the nature of artificial intelligence to explore every possibility.
That's what it's programmed to do.
Yeah, and this is in fact what Elon Musk, John showed me this little clip, was talking about. Curious, he called it, as though it's a human thing. But you have to program it to find information. That's the nature of AI, okay? So Nigel's postulation after that was, if we are being visited by something, okay, then from another planet, and it has the technology to get here with all the incredible difficulty it would have to get to travel light years away, okay, because it's got to be a distant place, it has to be something artificially intelligent. It can't be a life form. Life wouldn't survive those kinds of distances to start with. But even if life could survive those kinds of distances, it doesn't make sense that something that's developed that far would send out something living and risk it. It's going to be AI, like we send probes to Mars or to other planets to where we can't go, to examine what's going on there. Okay. Then he thought, okay, so if it is AI, let me take a look at the nature of the kind of experiences that people have when they meet entities from these craft. Okay. So he took a look at those experiences as they're described by abductees, and it would certainly seem to be the case that whatever these greys are is emotionless, has no concern for pain that they cause when they do experimental procedures on their human subjects. And these seem to be very, very much based on looking at our reproductive systems, okay, genetic testing, testing sperm, testing ova, doing experiments with them, using various devices, causing pain, okay. And most abductees report that they seem to have no care for the pain they're causing or the distress they're causing. They just seem to be emotionless. Now that's, to him, to Nigel, that signified, okay, that really does match in with my theory that these are some kind of artificial intelligence. So he basically drew those threads together as a logical conclusion. And incredibly, he was the only one to do it, which is remarkable. But not only that, he tied it into a whole philosophical picture of the nature of existence itself and why, not only why they are here, but why we are here. Yeah. And he asked the question, okay, so if they are so intelligent and so way in advance of us in terms of knowledge and intelligence, why on earth are they interested in us primitive, emotion-led, irrational creatures who, what can we possibly offer them? You know, but they seem to be fascinated. And abduction is something that can take place, it seems to take place in families through generations. They seem to be, it's like some kind of experimental hotbed we are for them that they're looking at. Why could they possibly be interested in us? So his next logical premise after that was, okay, so if they're interested in us, we must have something they don't have. Okay.
Absolutely.
And he thought, okay, what could that be? And that was when it's occurred to him, okay, so if we're not purely physical beings, if we're not just the atoms and the physical body that we're in, if we live on after we die, and he also had come to the conclusion that we definitely do through a very logical step-by-step process, not religious belief. He was very anti-religion at that stage. He was born a Catholic and totally rejected the kind of nonsense the Catholic Church threw at him, right? If we have something that lives on beyond the physical, and these creations are purely physical, right? We must have something that they don't have, that is eternal, that can live on, right? So everything in the physical universe, he said, is subject to what's called the entropic drift, which breaks things up, rots things, everything breaks apart, right? You leave your car, it goes rusty. Our bodies get older, they break down. You leave food, it rots.
He talked about entropy a lot.
Yeah,
entropy.
Yeah, okay.
Second law.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have something that's not of the physical universe, okay, and instead of getting into greater and greater states of separation and chaos, which is what atoms do because of the entropic drift, goes the opposite way, okay?
Indeed.
A power of union, of binding, a state of perfection where everything is together, okay? Now, if that state is infinite and eternal and has no limits, okay, right? It's always there as a backdrop to everything. It's not like there's God and there's us. And that state of perfection is always there, pulling the other way to entropy. This is what they don't have, these greys. This artificial
No machine can
intelligence.
do that.
No machine can, because it is not connected to that place. It's a purely physical creation, but it can beat entropy. And if there's something that can beat entropy and stop this breakup, they've got to get, it's their holy grail, okay? Because they're purely physical, they're breaking down, they're looking for something which can keep that coherence. And that's why his second book was called Grey Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls.
Indeed.
Because it sounds really dramatic and it sounds a bit unrealistic and science fiction like, the title, but it is literally that. They are our essence that they are after. The only thing they don't have is a soul. And they're after that connection.
And they can't think. They think consciousness is just a resource. You know, like you know, we'll mine something or whatever. They think it's a force that's out there that's in these little wandering beings. They don't realize that we're conscious because they got no consciousness to be aware of it. You know, it's like this camera doesn't see you or me. It doesn't do
Right.
any seeing. It's just programmed to report the pixels in the right order.
Mhm.
So cameras don't see, microphones don't hear. In the same way, the greys haven't got consciousness. They are not aware, but they are programmed. And that's the big danger of what we're trying to create here. Because once the idea really is to merge with us, therefore. Since we are the beings that have that, then what about if you had both? What about if you had an AI that could think and had free will to be able to make choices? Then, of course, that would be the ideal way to do things. Problem is, it's impossible for the reasons that Nigel spent 3 books outlining, really.
Well said, both of you. And if you ever see me turn my video feed off, where it's just, where it's just my picture, just keep talking.
Yeah.
Just keep talking. I'm saving on bandwidth because sometimes there'll be a little bit of lag, a little
Fair
bit,
enough.
either on my
Sure.
end or
No,
your
no
end.
worries.
So if you see that, just keep talking. But so, are the Greys' ultimate aim, one of their main goals, agenda, whatever, to replace humanity's natural, spiritual, and biological heritage and
That's to merge with it.
ancestral lineage with a synthetic machine-like existence?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, is there any hope for us down the road?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, there is.
No, because they're made of things that, we came in at the beginning of the universe because essentially consciousness created the universe. In other words, if you go back and you look at things like the double slit experiment, etc., that you require an observer to so-called collapse the wave equation to actually make something real. And therefore, consciousness is something which precedes the universe, and that's where you get the concept of God and Godhead, etc. But the thing is that consciousness is an implicit function of the universe. It's not something that emerges, the general science thinks at the moment that if you make something complex enough, consciousness will emerge. In fact, it's totally impossible because unless you have that remembered line back to your origin, which all living things do, then you are a remnant of thought. You are the detritus of the universe. You can't put all of that back together to try and make some facsimile of a human being and then expect it to suddenly start working. Because without that spark, that's why life needs life to be created. Because if you try to create life, then you need the concept of peace, because consciousness, no machine can detect consciousness, and the problem with that is therefore how does life work? How does consciousness interact with matter? And life is that very special case that Nigel worked out the mechanism for. And he's asked me to write the nuts and bolts of that from a scientific point of view. But he hit the philosophy and the molecular systems that would really define that. So without that line, you really can't be conscious at all. So really, they're chasing their tails trying to make these AIs do the things they want. And the end product is that they will try to merge that AI with us. And you can see all of these experiments where they're putting machines into people's brains, etc. Because, the whole of the living system, the consciousness is not something you can detect, but it can influence, and it causes the body, if you like, to make structured fields which are detectable, electricity, etc., structured holographic fields, and those can be tampered with. So the way you think, the way the brain thinks, it's not really doing it, it's the consciousness behind it. But the way the brain does that is via electric and magnetic signals. And the thing is that if you got a machine inside you that's also producing those electric magnetic signals because you're part of a computer hive, then you won't even know what you're thinking anymore. And then your chances of returning back up that line to greater and greater order are compromised completely. And so then you're into the hive mentality where you gradually lose your ability to have access to that consciousness. You become an avatar or an icon of your own past, really. And the thing is not recoverable. And then eventually the AIs will subsume consciousness within their system, and that's the end of it. Nigel said that, these planet after planet, it becomes a system of winking diodes in the end, because eventually, because it's impossible to actually make that merger and use that to go back for an AI, then the end is entropic. It's going to decay.
Well said. And of course, I was kind of laughing a little bit because what you were saying was exactly spot on with what I was wanting to mention next. And a few things of what you were saying. And I wish I've mentioned what I'm about to read, one of my notes, a few times on other podcasts, but I wish
Right.
I would have had the pleasure of asking Nigel. But after I read this, we can keep doing it how we've been doing it. Danielle, you can give me your thoughts, and then John. But
Sure.
so what if, these grays, these non-human intelligences or whatever are, they're working alongside certain elites and figureheads in the world,
Yeah.
maybe through non-government organizations or whatever. Rather, they're working alongside them physically and knowingly, or subconsciously or consciously. And these entities are able to tap into one's subconscious thoughts via some type of alien download or virus to help push the world towards this AI transhuman type society. But you may ask why? What will be the reason for this push towards this technological and technocratic utopian type world? Maybe one variable on the agenda bingo card is to have a vast amount of the population plugged into AI, like in similar ways to that of the Matrix. We already have Elon Musk Neuralink and other brain chips that are becoming more and more of a reality instead of just the Arthur C. Clarke science fiction novel. We also have a huge amount of the younger generation that is being groomed into thinking that the emerging AI technologies are cool and are led to believe that this is their future, no matter if they want it or not. And virtual reality games are more popular than ever. With all that being said, maybe these entities are pushing us towards this AI collective hive mind transhumanist future because these entities want us to be plugged in. And if we are plugged in, it opens the doors for humans to be more hackable. Why would these entities want to hack into us through these highly advanced emerging AI technologies? Because these entities will have the ultimate tool in their cosmic toolbox of deception by overriding our autonomy, almost like a self-driving car. And what I believe the ultimate goal by these entities is that they need our essence. They need our soul. They need our spirit. It could be a good source for these entities, or it could be what these entities do not have and what they are trying to achieve. If they can't physically pluck our soul out of our body, maybe they think they can create some type of digital copy of our soul, spirit, our essence. And it will be easier for them to achieve this if the human race is plugged into this AI dystopian matrix future.
Exactly. Wow, that's an incredible insight. You basically summed up the essence of Nigel's books. Yeah, amazing.
Well, because
yeah.
it was his, and I want you to give me your thoughts first, Danielle, and then John.
Yes.
But it was his research that kind of opened the doors for me bringing that to other discussions and other podcasts, because I was thinking, what if, that they are artificial in nature, like almost like robots or whatever. And then I started thinking, why are we heading towards down this futuristic type Arthur C. Clarke dystopian AI future world? And so if we are, and if they are working alongside some of these figureheads in the world, consciously or subconsciously or whatever, then maybe they're being driven like a mind virus or something. They're being influenced. These world figureheads are being influenced by these entities to push us towards that future so we can be plugged in. And maybe that's how they can achieve that essence, that soul, that spirit of us. It'd be easier for them to achieve that if we're all plugged in.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly. Now, the key thing is, and it's really important that your audience understands this from Nigel's perspective. They can't actually capture a soul, right? They can't, a soul is not physical, right? There's no way they can really, they can capture a soul, but they can't really get the essence of what a soul is.
Can they make a copy though? Can they make a
Yes,
copy?
yes.
Like
And
kind
they-
of like I
yes.
mentioned this. I don't mean to interrupt, but y'all can have the floor
Please
as long
feel
as
free,
you want
feel
here in
free.
just a minute. But
Yeah.
after this gets done, this interview, it's going to make a copy. It's going to download the copy,
Yeah.
the original. Say that's the soul. This onto this computer.
Yes.
But I don't do the editing on this computer. I do it on my
Yes.
laptop.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a copy, drag it to an SD card. That's a copy. That's not the
Yes.
original that downloaded onto the computer. And that copy is what I edit. So that copy
Yes.
could be what they're trying to achieve, maybe. I don't know.
Exactly. You've hit
That's
the nail.
exactly
You've
what
hit
they
the
do.
nail on the head. So what they can do. So to explain this, I need to explain what Nigel's theory of what happens when we die. Okay. So his concept of at the point of death, right? There's no pearly gates with somebody judging whether you've been good or bad. Okay. There's no directive God there who's telling you where you're going to go, and as the church or the religious organizations would have you believe. Okay. There's nothing like that.
Mhm.
Basically, we go to the point of resonance that we are. In fact, we don't really go anywhere. Our body leaves us and we are where we are in terms of our resonance, either with closer towards that perfect state of union that Nigel called the Godverse, okay, or more resonant with the physical universe, or somewhere on that spectrum, right? Now, if in life, everything we relate to is materialism, our own specific interests and looking after those, regard not so much caring for other people and what they might need. Okay, everything basically that serves the physical senses and relates to the physical reality that tells us we need to protect ourselves, look after ourselves, feed on physical needs, our physical interests, and go after physical goals. Okay, if we are focused and shaped in all of those things, okay, when we die, we won't be able to get beyond the physical state. We will be trapped at what Nigel calls the edges of atoms. Okay. So he described the state of that we go to when we die. Okay. If we can get beyond that physical state as a space between atoms. Okay. The state where there's a piece that where the force of atoms doesn't reign. Okay, so if you imagine, you would need really to see pictures from the diagrams from the book to understand this. But in fact, maybe I can show you.
And I can try to pull them up for everybody to see also.
Yeah, if you want to, maybe I'll show you later, and then you
Yes.
can pull them up and show people. Okay, so if you imagine atoms are spheres, although they're not solid billiard ball like spheres, okay, it's something like that, right? And the space in the middle, okay, is the place where which Nigel calls the space between atoms. In the very center of that space is perfect peace, right? Where the force at the edges of atoms is the least. In fact, there's no force. Yeah. Okay. And as you get further and further away from that center, there's more and more force. At the edges of the atoms, there's the greatest amount of force. Okay. If when you die, you're resonant with atoms and you want that physical state more than anything else, that's where your psychology is. You will stay there. Okay. Those are the kinds of psychologies which will be copied, if you like, and trapped by the Greys, because a copy of their physical state remains there, and they remain trapped there in that copy because they can't get beyond it, because that's what they've chosen. Only because that's what they've chosen. Okay. If somebody chooses values and a sense of reality that's made up of compassion, caring, they put people first. Okay. They will identify with what's not physical, and they will go more towards the center of the space between atoms, where there is no force. So at the edges of atoms, because there's force there, that's where the Greys can network souls in, okay, and capture souls, because their technology can exert extra force. Okay, if that extra force wasn't there, maybe not so, it wouldn't be such a difficult place to get away from. But their extra force can capture souls there, and their technology can reach those souls, and they can use the power that those souls have, because they're still connected. They haven't lost their connection to the Godverse, right? They're still conscious and alive and have awareness and will, the two components which Nigel is defined as constituting everything that comes from the Godverse, right? They can use that power, if you like, that potential difference between atoms and what is not of atoms, to fire their systems and stop and in some way counter the entropic drift. And control, not so much counter it, but control the entropic drift.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what Musk meant when he talked about we can harness the will.
Yeah, otherwise, why he actually, so this is incredible that he said will is what they're interested in. Why would they be interested in our will?
I know,
and that's the one thing, that's the one thing we have that they don't have, free will.
Yeah.
Because everything, if you're purely atomic, okay, everything is predetermined for you. Cause and effect. There's nothing that can intercede between cause and effect. It's only if you have a component that's outside of the physical universe, outside of time, okay, that you can possibly intercede that cause and effect of dominoes hitting each other, right? So Elon Musk amazingly said this.
Yeah.
What they want, or what artificial intelligence needs from us,
we'll keep them around for their will.
Keep us around for our will.
Now, will is a fundamental property of living things. You see, the reason they don't come and just force the chips into us and just okay, we're coming around your house, we're going to inject the chips and everything, because if you say no, then those chips are not going to affect your soul. They can't get into you if you've said no. And so the big trick since the Second World War, when they tried to do such things, and of course it failed, what they're trying to do is to entice people to want it. Mm-hmm. And so the PR is absolutely fantastic that they've put forward to make children and adults, etc., absolutely want this, because when you say yes, you've acceded to their entry into your world, and you then become part of that hive. So free will is which gives you the ability to choose. The AIs haven't got the ability to choose because they're programmed, hard programmed, and therefore it's an if then else type situation, a computer derived decision, which is not the same as saying no. You know, human beings can go against logic. They can do anything they really wish, which is an enormous power to have when you think of it that way.
And just something I've got here, which is quite interesting, because it's a near-death experience from people who actually seem to see these greys at the point of death, and it just gives some idea of what goes on for those who are in that unfortunate situation, right? So Dr. Francis Cervello, a family practitioner in Fort Lauderdale, said he was present when one of his patients coded 5 times in the ER. He'd known the man for many years, and he was a very calm, nice gentleman, as nice as you would ever want to meet. After he was revived, he told the doctor that he saw fire and little creatures about 4.5 feet tall all around him. He described them as bad-looking, terrible creatures, and he saw them every time he died. Another NDE experienced reported after undergoing bypass surgery that she found herself in an enormous silver great place, rather like a hangar for aeroplanes, but going on forever, and miles away there were some tiny figures. So it's at the point of death. That's what they're really interested in. And all the technological systems that they embed us in now, or that we are embedding ourselves in, maybe at their inspiration, are to prepare us for that entrapment at that point. Okay, when we're outside, when they can really use our power, when we're at the edges of atoms,
Absolutely.
trapped in that force, and they can use whatever we have there to travel faster than the speed of light, because only thought can travel faster than the speed of light. Only thought can make those kind of connections. So we would be, if you like, a quantum computer, the kind of quantum computer they're looking for now, which they haven't managed to create. That could be powered by us if we get trapped in that situation.
Indeed.
So let me turn my video feed off. I'm lagging a little bit, but so maybe they are working, like I said, with some of these elites and figureheads, technocrats. Maybe that is what they're trying to do with the supercomputer. You know,
it could be these elites are the ones that they've picked up at death and then sent back through the process of reincarnation with a psychology that is more towards what the AIs want. Want is a strange word, but the aim of what the AIs is trying to do is in the psychology of these people that they're sending back.
If there are any abductees listening, you are not the ones that are going to be trapped. Okay, it is being abducted doesn't mean you're the type of soul who will be trapped at death and used by them to power up their systems. If you're abducted, it's because you're interrupting their interception system. You're a break in the circuit, and they want to know why, right? So please, abductees, don't be scared. Nigel, if you believe what Nigel's saying and you followed what he's saying, don't feel that this refers to you in terms of harvest. It doesn't, right? And I think that's a really important thing to say, because I can imagine that if you have been abducted and you face these things, you could be really worried, thinking, oh no, what's going to happen when I die, right? No, that's not the case. Yeah. Ones that they've really got, they don't need to abduct.
Well, maybe these entities are giving some of these, that's the reason why they're giving some of these abductees, contactees, how everything's love and light. And because maybe that's the trick that they're trying to ploy, is making it how maybe they know that they're different and unique, and they want them to think that everything's love and light and that they're here on a peaceful mission or whatever. Maybe that's the lure, that's the trap, to make us think that the Greys are all benevolent and all good and loving.
100%. So there's so many examples, Whitley Strieber being one of them, okay, where they do the most terrible things to people, right? And those people somehow eventually come to the conclusion that they're quite a good thing for the planet. Okay. And it's like typical, in our terms, that's what a narcissist convinces their victim of, right? That they're all these horrible things they're putting their victim through are really for their own good. And if they didn't put them through those things, then they would never discover their true beauty, and that they're actually a positive force. Okay. And these are obviously hugely intelligent, so they would have the kind of understanding to manipulate, and for sure that goes on, for sure. I can't imagine it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we can do it as human beings, manipulate, how much more would they be able to do it? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. What was Nigel's take? Because I've had many people over the years, who say that a lot of these Greys, maybe they once came from out there, but maybe they're actually here deep within the earth, or they're here just beyond our visible spectrum, because we only see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum.
Yes.
And if they're AI in nature, then they have the technologies and means at their disposal to do such a thing, to slip in and out. Maybe this is actually their domain, and they feel like it's their domain. That's why they're trying to create this heavy, dense environment, AI reality, to keep us drained down to where they can thrive in the physical instead of hiding in the unseen. Maybe
Yes.
But what's
they need places of force.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's a very good question, and it's an interesting question which a lot of people ask because, as I'm sure you know, there's two different theories on this, right? There's the ultra-terrestrial theory, which says they're in another frame of reality, and
John
there's the
Mack, or not John
extraterrestrial
Mack,
theory.
John
Keel,
Keel. Yeah,
or is
John
it?
Keel.
Is it? Yeah,
Keel,
there's a
John
few
Keel.
people who believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's the extraterrestrial idea, which says they come from space. Okay, Nigel's suggestion is it's both are true. Okay. So if they are ultimate AI, right, it's a program. Okay. It's not, we see sort of, we're used to our like science fiction movies, great big robots and whatever, and big craft, which we do see, right? But ultimately, all of that is created by a program. We can send a program. A program doesn't have a physical need to have a physical location. It can be anywhere at any time. We have 3D printers that can print out a program and print a 3D object. Okay. Nigel's suggestion was that possibly when there's times of when there's a great explosion of force, right, on the planet. Okay, so that can be at the time of the first nuclear tests.
Okay.
Okay, when there was a huge rash of sightings and sort of time of Roswell. Okay, that at points at which there's a great burst of force that allows those programs which exist in a heavier frame of tension to ours, it's like they print out, literally print out. Okay, that we touch that heavier frame of tension momentarily. Okay, when a comet, when a meteorite or it hits the planet. Okay, like at the time of the dinosaurs. Okay, again, a huge burst of force. Okay, so when these things happen, it's possible that our particular frame of tension, he called it a force signature, matches in with a heavier frame of tension, and where this program exists, and this program can manifest at those times. So whilst it's definitely possible that there are locations in the universe which have created this technology, okay, and sent out programs which manifest themselves in craft, maybe the craft don't actually travel here. Okay, maybe it's just a program that prints out. Okay, but also, and this is a little bit complex, and I think you'd have to read the third book to really understand it properly. He also suggests that the Greys and their technology are a product of our final devolution. So as you may know, for those who haven't heard about this before, new listeners and don't know about Nigel's work, he suggests that rather than evolution, we have devolved from a state of perfection into a state of imperfection. Okay, and if you accept that we are not purely physical and that we come from a state of non-physicality that is superior to ours, devolution is the only option. We've become trapped in this state where we weren't trapped before. Okay, so from a state in which we didn't have physical bodies and were always conscious of union with each other, we were one being. Okay, Nigel called this hydrogen man, the state like gas. Okay, we then became trapped in physical bodies. Okay, and once we were trapped in physical bodies, we couldn't see as clearly or feel as clearly a sense of each other. And we became self-centered, individualistic, and focused on material things, our own gratification. Okay, take that to a further extreme, to the ultimate end of that, and it's a state where we only identify with the physical and not spiritual anymore at all. That's when we create a purely material reality for ourselves. Okay, so those who are trapped, those souls, those consciousnesses that are trapped on the edges of atoms because they have no resonance with anything beyond them, they've chosen atoms, okay, need to create some way in which they can survive. Okay, their consciousness, their will has literally created this program, which is the Greys. And that's translated not only through our artificially intelligent, the creations of technology which are going on right now on our planet, and since COVID, that's just been accelerated manyfold. Okay, but also literally we create another heavier reality. So the will of those who are trapped on the edges of atoms actually powers entropy faster than entropy to a heavier reality.
It enables their creation.
And enables their creation.